Great, thanks. As we can see, it's the 26th bird count here at Sea Ranch. It will be the first weekend in January. And most of the teams, you can see a map that's laid out there. We cover all of Sea Ranch in 10 different sections. And so if you're planning on doing the bird count, you can think about whether you'd like to bird near your own house, whether you'd like to try a particular habitat, or just explore someplace new. So that's what we're hoping. A few people will actually stay home and watch their feeders through the day. And you just need to be careful if you're doing that, that you don't count the same 3 juncos over and over and over again. So you need to look at the largest number you see at one time is the count that you're looking for in that circumstance. So we hope that gives people many different options to go out to an area that's new and different or to stay closer to home. We definitely, all of the teams are interested in additional helpers. So we encourage you to join in the count, and you can do it as a complete novice because we still need people that say, there's a bird, what is it? And other people will help identify. Cheryl, is there anything you would like to add?
Not at this time. Let's
Great.
go.
Okay.
And I will just put a plug in for those beginner birders. I started on the 2017 count and really only knew just a few birds, but I could point out very quickly things that I saw moving. And that was a great beginning and has really got me hooked ever since. So I have the Christmas bird count to thank for my budding interest in birds. And Cheryl and Diane are a huge part of that. This was advice given to me on my very first count, and something just to think about, that being as descriptive as you can about birds. Some of you know I'm very into nature journaling. Even if you're not nature journaling yet, you might want to have a piece of paper and a pencil to jot some things down tonight, or even jot things down when you're looking out the window or on the deck or on a trail. If you can get even 3 of these types of details about a bird, you have a better and better chance of being able to identify it. And it's really like this fabulous puzzle and new way to see our commons landscape of Sea Ranch. So we're going to start with an easy one. I'm hoping you all know this bird.
Yes.
And that is the California quail. They're a whole lot of fun. And one thing to think about habitats is you don't always see them. We've got meadows, forests, oceans, beaches. They're not ocean birds or shore birds, but you do see them on a whole lot of Sea Ranch. So be thinking about where you've seen some of these birds. And as we get to some, I'm going to start with the more familiar. And as we get to some of the unusual, if you want to see one, you might put something in the chat, or if you've seen one recently, you might put something in the chat about that. But these 2 birds are not blue jays. They are blue. And one is a scrub jay and a Stellar's. Diane, is there anything that stands out to you about these 2 birds?
Watch this little bird thing.
We're typically going to see the Stellars up in the trees
Okay.
up on the hillside. And we're typically going to see the scrub jay more in the open meadows. That said, there's an overlapping zone. And so I get both of them up here near the airstrip. But clearly, there's a distinct look that's different between the 2 of them. So if you see a jay, see whether you've got a rounded head, a crested head. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and that eyebrow on the scrub jay is another kind of characteristic or thing to even see in other birds, kind of a bright brow. Here's one that'll come in big numbers, I'm guessing, on the count. There are a lot of them out there right now. And just to kind of note a couple of things about this bird, what are the size of it? Hard to tell from a photo. Where is color? What about bill size? What about tail? You'll hear a lot of peeping, especially in the myrtles, but all over really right now. And this is its official name. It also has an unofficial name, and we call them butterbutts. I actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I don't think I have a picture of the butterbutt in the slideshow. But just going back to this, right at the base of the tail, there is a yellow patch, and that's usually what you see is they're flying away from you. So they are dubbed butterbutts. But something I learned just this year was some have yellow under their bill and some have white, and they're subspecies. So the one on the left is a myrtle warbler. I guess you would say a yellow rumped warbler myrtle subspecies. Is that, how do you say it officially?
That's probably it, but that's a mouthful. The bird
Yeah, it is a mouthful. Yeah. And I don't know if we have myrtles, wax myrtles that we put in our yard, and there were some that were already growing. These are the ones that are authorized native plants on Sea Ranch, but they make these berries, and the myrtle warbler was what this bird was formerly known as well. Not just the subspecies, but they gobble them down like they're candy. So here's one that's going to also show up on the count in pretty big numbers that I think most people know. This is a robin, just a robin. But this bird, I am so bummed. On the way back from the count, we did a practice walk yesterday. I saw one of these, and I haven't seen one in 2 years, and I didn't get a picture. So this picture is from 2 years ago, but it's a varied thrush, and it was up
Robin's.
Riven, up on the north end by the golf course. I'll give that group exact, very specific information of where it was found.
And that's a bird that's a little more likely to be up in the woods, especially in the redwoods, not out on the open meadows like the robin.
Right.
In most instances.
Yeah. And it's up near the golf course, where the woods come across and you walk through the redwoods. It's right in there.
Right there. Okay, great.
Here's a ubiquitous bird. And this is a sound you'll probably hear, I would think, all over Sea Ranch. Maybe not, yeah, even down at the beach. Actually, I've seen them now that I think about it. This one is a black phoebe. There's another phoebe in town right now that is the Say's phoebe. It's a beautiful colored bird. Less of those, but they're both flycatchers, and they sort of fly out, grab birds, and return to perches. They love coyote brush.
We grab bugs.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rare bugs.
Right.
Karen, you said grab birds.
Oh, grab bugs. Oh, yes.
Right.
Sorry.
Other things may grab birds, but not the phoebes.
Oh, and we did see that happen out at the lighthouse today, which we'll talk about when we get to that bird.
Okay.
Sharpshin.
Here's a fun one. These little birds have been all over Walk on Beach for the last few weeks. And I'm hoping the high tides really didn't totally scare them off. But This is a shorebird that doesn't just stick to the shore. I saw one in a parking lot in Chico too. But on Sea Ranch, they love the coast. They go up on the cliff, the bluff edge, and in the spring and summer, they're in the riverbed down in the Wallala River. Here's a sound you might hear. They say the call is how they get their name. I don't hear that.
Keep in mind that many birds have several different calls. And there is a time of year when they'll say a little more like kildee, kildee.
Okay. Well, that peepee one is the one I hear most often, and
Okay.
but they're delightful birds, really bold, beautiful. And
Oh, cool.
here, I don't know if you can see exactly what's going on, but this is taken down in the river. And this is not winter time. This is spring on the edge of summer. And there are 3 chicks that are trying to scrunch up underneath her and keep warm. And then I thought I'd include this one too. This is the awkward, the awkward years as they grow up a little bit. So they're cute anytime, I think.
Double.
Here's a funny one.
Coot, I think.
So this one, I think we have 2 clowns of the coast, and this is one of them. They'll be out in the water in big numbers. I don't know if folks know this one right away. I don't see them this close very often, but they have been in pretty close recently. It's a surf scoter.
Scoter. Scoter.
Yeah, beautiful orange.
They're also known as sea ducks. But here they cluster in big groups, and there's the female on the left, on the lower slides. They eat mole crabs and usually dive kind of deep after them. And Diane has been having us look at this behavior, so I just had to include this video. This is happening kind of right now. They're doing this, and they don't do it all the time, I think. I don't know that much about this behavior, but they beach themselves. And instead of diving down in the water for those mole crabs, they do this. They stick their head in the sand and grab a mole crab to eat. And they sort of fly back and forth doing this. That's pretty fun. There's another kind of scoter, a black scoter and a white wing scoter, neither of which I've ever seen. So that's still on my wish list. Oh, I will say, so far, 234 species have been recorded on eBird at Sea Ranch. I've only seen 158, so I've got 76 to go. and then some. We're really finding new species, even now.
Even now,
So,
sure.
yeah. And this one, we did a practice walk yesterday, and that's what this slide is from. This is usually the way you get to see these birds. They're way up. They love the hedgerows, pines. They're up high. You get this brilliant flash of yellow. They're just beautiful birds. And I was asking Cheryl and Diane for their favorites. This was Diane's favorite. I love this bird too.
That's a gorgeous way to see it, but not what you're typically going to find in the upper treetops. Great.
Yeah, if you're patient, they will come down, but they're usually pretty high. And that is the female of the Townsend's warbler, a little more olivey in the eye instead of the stark black and yellow, but beautiful, beautiful birds. This one, I would tell you meadows and mostly forests, like, but I've now seen it the last couple of weeks, Shell Beach, Walk on Beach,
Wow.
and Pebble, which was kind of a surprise. It looks to me like they're going into the gritty bluff edge to get something, and then they fly out. But that's not conclusive. I don't know what that is.
Probably
But
some small insect that
Hmm.
that maybe is in the
in the
bank,
loose.
in the
Hmm.
looser stuff, or if there's some plants there or
Maybe
little tiny bugs.
Not sure.
I
Yeah.
was watching butterbutts the other night, and one sat on a treetop and it kept jumping up about 2.5 feet, grabbing an insect and going back to its original spot over and over and over. So there may be some little tiny bugs out there to feed on. With a tiny bill like that, they're insect eaters.
Yeah.
How big is
That-
this bird, Karen?
Like that. It's little. It's little. I think one thing that Diane mentioned, that it might be just important to do, the sort of flying out, catching something and returning. That's a pattern that the Phoebes do, but definitely the yellow rumps, they burst out of a perch, fly up, and then they often kind of come back to where they've started. So that kind of a clue is also, it helps kind of determine what kind of bird you're looking at to
Are
pay
they-
attention.
Are
what
they
it's doing.
solitary birds like Phoebes?
Are they what?
Solitary birds like Phoebes?
No, yellow rumps are all over the place, and they really respond to pishing. When you go psh, 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 they'll come out. So they'll kind of perch on the ends of the myrtles, kind of looking like what's going on. But definitely not solitary. The Townsends, I see them alone or in small numbers, yellow rumps in very big numbers sometimes.
Thank you.
Mm.
But also many times you will have a mixed flock moving through the trees. And instead of it being all yellow rumps, there might be 4 or 5 different species together. So it is important to look at each one.
Yeah. And we're jumping around a lot. This is a feeder bird. If some of you have bird feeders, you've probably seen this bird show up. It's got another bird that looks sort of like it, but kind of looking at it, what features stand out to you? What do you notice are kind of things to pay attention to, and look at it in comparison to another one that I'll show you a photo in just a second.
It has a thick bill.
Bird.
Yeah, a really thick bill. Yeah. Great for cracking seeds. Yeah.
And it's red.
I didn't record this one's song. It's got a very beautiful song too. It's a purple finch.
I've seen.
And the thing that I'm putting in some slides of things that were really hard for me when I was first starting, and female and male birds looking different. It still drives me nuts, and I'll show you some, especially at the end. But this one, purple finches, were really hard. And I ended up doing a lot of sketches and quick drawings of bills and what's it called? I'm blanking on the name. The ear patch. It starts with an A. Well, anyway, airy. I can't think of it. Anyway, I'm terrible with bird vocabulary, but the ear patch is sometimes something to pay attention to. And when looking at house finches versus purple finches, it's helpful. So kind of be thinking or even saying out loud differences between these two. And those are the things I'm talking about. Oh, auricular. Is it auricular? auricular.
Auricular,
That's it.
means ear.
So on the house finch, do you see how it's kind of brown back behind the eye? That's a patch of feathers that cover their ear, if I have this right. Please correct me. I still consider myself to be a beginning birder, but it's brown on the house finch, and it's not brown, or it's redder on a purple finch.
And although the book calls it an auricular patch, ear patch is just fine.
Yeah. Here's a lovely bird.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them right now. I've been seeing many on each walk. A hermit thrush. They're usually low, kind of in the bushes, really, but they've been coming out and really making all sorts of racket. There's another bird that looks very much like this, but it's not around in the wintertime, called a Swainson's thrush. But then if you notice that rusty tail,
Yeah.
that's a real indicator of a hermit thrush.
Are these birds usually on their own?
I've seen twos, but kind of never more than
Right.
two, mostly on their own, actually. But I've seen pairs. I don't know if it's a male female pair, but I have seen two birds together a lot in the last month.
But they're not a bird like the yellow rump that you're going to see a whole flock of
flock
them
or something.
together. So
Yeah.
yes, much more individual.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Ah,
Easy to ID.
I love these birds. People talk about your spark bird or an anchor bird, anchor birds to compare other birds against, like learn one bird and then compare everything else. I wouldn't say the bloy or the oyster catcher was my anchor bird, but it's definitely is a bird that just got me excited about Sea Ranch and sort of the environs. They nest here in the breeding season. So I've been able to watch a whole cycle for a few years because they do a monitoring of these birds. So that's something else if you're interested in trying that out. It's a lot of fun to see. Diane can give more information about that. And here, if some of you joined right in the beginning, Phil, who loves to be out on the rocks taking photos, there are birds that hang out on those wet rocks. And see if you can see how many birds are in this shot. But these little buggers, they were so hard for me in the beginning. Well, they still are. They blend in completely. But if you're really patient, looking down at dark rocks or even things covered with seaweed, the mussel beds, you'll see these turnstones. And it's not until they fly that it really gives you a clue that they're down there. They do make a distinctive sound, a little peeping sound, but that the white on their bellies and on their wings is really what gives their location away. So they're out there a lot more than we realize, and they're really fun to watch. The highways had them very confused. They were up on the top of bluff edges and things because most of their spot, and on a lot of beaches too, where they're not usually down on the beach. They're usually on the rocks or on the mussel beds. So that's the turnstone. I wanted to include this one because many journal pages were written about the differences between these two, which I could not get for the longest time. Standing out there, moving around really fast, it's not as easy as it is looking at photos, but even sometimes in photos, the differences, I don't think they're super striking. I mean, I'm looking at it now. Obviously, the leg color is probably something that people are noticing.
Yeah. But they look alike.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And they've got ones definitely a slightly grayer. They do tend to hang out together sometimes too. But the surf bird, you see fewer of these
Right.
overall than you do the turnstones. But they do that same thing, being stirred up by the waves.
Mhm.
Now here's one. This is not a winter photo. This is another bird that's with us year round, leaves the shore, and this is down by the hotspot. And its namesake comes from its plumage. It's the spotted sandpiper, but this is what it looks like this time of year. So a few less spots. And even I'm going to go backwards a bit. Look at the bill color. It really changes.
Same bird.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, really different. And here, this, I just shot. This is usually what you see, them flying off really fast. They get spooked really easily. So approaching the bluff, they're usually down on the rocks below. If you go slow, they're very little, but they will get spooked. But did you see it kind of do this bobbing with its bottom? That's a real characteristic of this bird. And this one was had chicks in the river that I got to watch hatch and mature, and they were bobbing when they were a few inches tall. It was totally adorable. They didn't even really have tail feathers. It was very cute.
And that's a very distinctive, typical characteristic of the spotted sandpiper, to do that bobbing. So that they'll do winter or summer, where in the summer is when they've got the really, really strong spotting on them. And then
Yeah.
lighter now.
And Deborah is asking, when is it a spotted sandpiper versus not? I mean, this one, I will note, they're always spotted sandpipers, this kind, but this one still has quite a few spots. There are some that almost have none visible
Yeah.
in the front.
Right.
Those are always spotted sandpipers. There are other sandpipers that we'll look at, other peeps, but this one is a spotted, whether it has them or not, if that's your question.
Teresa says, what's their leg color? You can't see it in this picture, can you?
Back up
There
here.
you go.
There.
More of a yellowish leg color.
Yeah. Yellow.
And you can see that on this picture, the spots are very, very tiny
Yeah.
in the wintertime.
Yeah. They're really cute. They've also, I will say, I've seen them most, sorry, I'm flicking all over the place. Sea pine, down by Olson is a good spot, down by, I mean, they're kind of all over, but there are 3 very reliable spots for these spotted sandpipers.
Okay.
They're fun. So this one I include, you've seen one of these birds before, but not the other one. The one on the bottom, note those red feet, that sharp pointy bill. If it started to fly away, we would see brown and white vivid patterns. That's the black turnstone. This is one that I found very, very challenging because the bird on the top does that bobbing thing too. And it's a little bit different. Doesn't really have spots. So here's our spotted sandpiper friend again, and whoops, and that is a wandering tattler. So I see spotted sandpipers much more than I see wandering tattlers. They've also been at Sea Pine pretty reliably on Sea Pine Beach. And they're a lot of fun to watch, kind of fishing in the sand and things like that with their bill. But yeah, they do have, Teresa's saying they have a slightly different head shape. The bill doesn't really have that orangish color. And they're just, sizes are a really hard one to judge when you're sitting there looking at a single bird. But the spotted sandpiper is really small. So once I started seeing more of those, I don't know if those gave you trouble as much as me, Diane, but I don't know if you have any tips for distinguishing or things to look for with those birds in particular.
Well, if you talk about the size difference, the spotted sandpiper is about 7.5 inches and the wandering tattler 11 inches. So there is a significant difference in size in the bird. And you're also noticing some leg color difference and some face pattern difference. So sometimes it's just watching for a little bit and looking at what's distinctive.
Yeah. And I will say Sea Pine has been a very lucky beach lately. Going down there and even sitting on a log, like there's just a lot of stuff going on in the water and on the sand. So yeah, leg color, Teresa's asking about, I think it's pretty close, actually. I mean, for some reason, I feel like the yellow stands out more on a tattler, even though in the photo it looks bright. I feel like you notice the legs when you're looking at a wandering tattler. But okay, everybody take a deep breath. I feel like we could do a whole thing on just sparrows alone. But I have to say, these birds drove me bananas in the beginning, but now I am so into the subtle differences in sparrows. We have quite a few, and it's really surprising. The more you look, the more you notice. So I've put in yellow the ones that you're more likely to see the most of right now. There's been some real rarities, and then there are other ones that just kind of hang out in different ways. We'll look at quite a few of them here in just a second. But I think sparrows, one of the harder things again is the male female, the breeding plumage is different than the regular, like they just change a lot too. So this is one to sort of learn one sparrow. And then when you look at the next one, compare it, this anchor bird idea. So here's, if I can suggest, if you don't already know this one, I would suggest this is a great anchor bird because there are a lot of them. I don't think I can take a walk from my house without seeing one every day. I don't know, the two characteristics, they're always singing or quite often singing. And do you see how the chest feathers have that little smudge right in the center? That's I think of as the defining characteristic that I use most often for that one. And oops, I don't think it's a song sparrow.
Right.
I don't think I have. This is another one that we have a lot of that also tripped me up, still does sometimes, even in the phrasing. And now I'm wondering if I didn't have the title on this one. Oh, I don't on this one either. This is a white-crowned sparrow. And what's confusing, I think, do you see that bird in the front? How it's got a yellow bill? And this bird has a yellow bill. Those are the same bird, but one is a juvenile. So that's a young bird in the front and an adult bird there. The male and female look the same.
Right,
So-
but the juvenile will have tan stripes with black, where the adult will have white stripes with darker.
Yeah. So here's a pair. So there's a male and a female. And what's the feature that stands out to you on this bird right now?
Yeah, it's a little hat, little hat.
Yeah. So this is a gold crown,
Mhm.
and it's when it's breeding season. So this is not, is this now? This one is now, actually, or close to now, I think. I think this was taken in, I don't know, I shouldn't say that, actually. I haven't seen a male that brightly colored recently. Diane, do you know when they're
Quite that bright, but they're still pretty bright.
getting?
I mean, it's a distinctive golden crown,
Yeah.
even though it's not breeding season. It'll get brighter.
But this is what threw me here. So that bird in the background, that is a golden crown.
Okay.
Another way you can tell those birds apart is it has a dark bill,
Mhm.
where the white crowned has that light bill.
Yeah.
I love these birds. So this is a sparrow that does something unusual along the coast. They really like to stay between, you can find them in their namesake, which they're called savanna sparrows. They hang out in the meadows and kind of all over the Stornetta lands. They'll be kind of all the way back to Highway 1. But
Hmm.
at Sea Ranch, you really find them between the trail, the bluff trail, and the edge.
Right.
They love that spot, and they're very, very fun birds. They'll stir up a lot when you walk by. They'll kind of leap out of the grass and leap ahead. They're nice little birds. Here's one. This is all of these are sparrows until we say we've exited the sparrow family. All of these are sparrows. So this one has a little bit different behavior, and we saw one of these on our practice walk yesterday too. They're usually down on the ground and they do this hopping and scratching. And this one is a fox sparrow.
Never seen.
And oh, Teresa, your question about the Savannah, they do. I feel like they're really bright. I wish I would have put. I have a picture of two of them in a coyote brush. They have a really bright face. This one doesn't look so bright actually in the photo, but they have that pinkish bill and a bright face, where a song sparrow, you can't see so much the gray on this one on the side. I gray brown face, smudge on the chest, and the white crown. It's definitely that vibrant bill that really stands out for me with the white crown. I don't know, Diane, what do you? I don't think of it. Yeah, I guess it does have. There's a yellow,
Right.
sometimes more pronounced spot on the top of the eye.
Right. Often the little stripe above the eye has more yellow in it. This is a very, very pale looking one, but it doesn't have the same type of head stripes. It's more stripes on the face.
And if I can mention just really simply, the white crown and the golden crown have totally pale breasts. They're not striped or marked at all. And that really stands out at a glance.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so with the sparrows, you want to notice that breast. Is it colored? Is it striped? You want to look at the head color and pattern and the beak. But the fox sparrow is great because they really like to jump and scratch, jump and scratch. They're seldom going to be up on the bushes. They're going to be under the bushes.
Yeah.
White crown, yeah.
And so those, whoops, sorry, those on the top are more
Very
common. And then the ones on the bottom are less common, especially the one in the middle. I would say you have a better chance of seeing the Lincoln sparrow and the Savannah sparrow. I can pretty much go out on a walk trying to find those and find them. I can't do that for the white-throated sparrow in the middle, but I have been seeing them a lot lately.
We only see a few white-throated sparrows here, and often people notice them if they come to seed under feeders. That's a typical place where people suddenly go, oh, wow, there's a white-throated sparrow in that group. They're just here in the winter, and so we get a few. The other ones, the song sparrow, that's here year round. So you're also going to be looking for what's seasonally here and how does the pattern change. But sparrows, they're a little trickier because there's so many different kinds.
And if anybody has questions about seeing these birds or anything as it comes up, there really are no silly questions. I encourage you to chime in if there's something that you're wondering about. This one is another bird that we'll see a lot of. And this one was just the other day watching, they're really active in the grass right now. And they'll even leap into the air and grab a little piece of grass and follow it down to get things off. But this one is a dark-eyed junco. They've got this dark hood. And their bill, if you notice, I mean, the hood is pretty distinctive, but their bill, this pinkish whitish bill really stands out as well.
And when they fly away from you, you'll see white in the outer tail feathers. So it's suddenly like, whoa, that's easy. That's a junco.
And they
Yeah.
travel together.
Yes,
Others.
usually a group of them.
Very,
Kind
very
of a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Numbers. They're good feeder birds too. Really a lot of the sparrows, not all, but a lot of the sparrows come to feeders. This technically is a sparrow or in the sparrow family. But love these birds, the spotted towhee. They do that similar behavior of kind of jump and scratch and jump and scratch and will be kind of under coyote brush and hide a lot of the times, but when they do come out, you get this real treat with a splash of color and that gorgeous eye.
I love spotted toys.
Ah,
This one, also a sparrow, also a towhee. I think, if I'm not mistaken, is this a state bird? I might have that wrong, actually. There's something about this bird in California that is significant, but it's one we don't see as much on Sea Ranch. So hopefully people will see it on the count. This was just taken the other day, but this photo was from Fort Ross. So not at Sea Ranch, but a couple of things to note here. It's got a pinkish eye, and do you see under its tail this? I should know that part. What's that part?
under tail coverts, but
I was gonna say, is it coverts? Okay, yeah, so it is coverts.
but
So that rusty
got a little
color,
rusty color under the tail that shows.
yeah. So
So it's
California
another
towhee.
towhee, right? Another towhee.
Mhm.
So here are sparrows that are really unusual ones, but this is kind of what I mean about the more you look. In the beginning, I did not see these distinctions, but these two on the left have just been seen in the last week or so, and some very rare listed even on eBird as rarities. So it really does, I don't know, it's very exciting to see and notice behaviors. Like look at the tree sparrows, Bill. It's dark on top and light on the bottom.
Yeah.
And I saw the chipping sparrow and the tree sparrow at the same time, and never having seen those birds before, I just noticed a reddish top and thought maybe one was a male and a female. So, you know, I was explaining to Jim that I thought I had seen 2 tree sparrows, when it was going back home and looking at my photos that no, those are different. So really pretty fun to sleuth through the sparrows. Even though it used to really bother me. but now it's just fun. So now we're exiting the sparrow category. This is a different bird, but still a little brown bird. One that loves feeders. So some of you might see it in your yard. On our little practice walk yesterday, we saw them. I think it's in the alders. It
Yeah.
loves those little trees with the little tiny cones right now.
Yeah,
But
any
here-
place there's an alder tree right now, there may be pine siskins.
Bird,
Yeah.
darling bird.
They like Niger seeds.
Oops. And one, if you look at the end of their tail, this is, I learned these birds also like house finches, like every other sparrow in the beginning, they all looked the same to me. And I think they love the Niger sunflower combination that we have in our feeder. And there are really many of them at a time will descend on the feeders. But the 2 things about this one that I now can tell pretty reliably, a really pointy bill, and the end of the tail, especially that little V-shaped notch in the tail, is a distinctive characteristic of the pine siskin. It does have the yellow, but I don't find that compared to finches and other goldfinches and lesser goldfinches. I can't always use that as a
Ew, that's so,
clear indicator.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Indeed.
we want for dessert.
Chewy.
Joey means it.
So the great blue heron, we don't have as many of them as we do the egrets, but we can see those in the meadow. I see one regularly down in the estuary at the park too. Big, beautiful birds, squawky birds when hawks are around. They make a great sound. The egrets, they both eat, I've seen them consume pocket gophers, but they're dining on these potato bugs lately.
Oh,
It's very funny to watch them eat the potato bugs, but this is a great egret. This is a beautiful image that Mike got of a bufflehead. This is a male bufflehead, and so up in the upper left, you'll see what the females look like. Really, the places to find these are mostly down in the estuary and on the golf course ponds. I've really only seen,
3 left.
yeah, I think that's really the only places I've seen them here. But beautiful. This bird is also found on the river, but can be in the ocean. So I've seen one a lot actually recently at Cormorant Close. I don't know, several days last week. Well, those are fun birds to see. This bird, very like just look at the differences. Eye color might be similar. Everything else totally different between these 2 birds, but that's what's so fun about learning a new bird. This is a coot. I saw an eagle eat one of these in the estuary, but there are a lot of them down on the river and in the ponds, like the buffleheads too, on the golf course. These also, Connie will, the golf course group will be the one that has the shot of seeing these, but also down in the estuary. Harder to spot these birds, but the photography group was getting great shots of a Sora, this year. But the Virginia rail on the left and the Sora on the right are two really amazing spots. They like to hang out in the reeds on the shores of the estuary. This is a trick question because I couldn't believe this shot. Mike took this, and I when these birds are in flight, I can never get them.
Wow.
But this bird, I also should have put the sound in here. They have a very distinctive call.
Right.
But this is what they look like when they're sitting still on a branch, eating a fish. But it's a kingfisher. And one thing that I learned that I think is really a fun tidbit is the difference in male and female can be seen in that chest color, that beautiful rusty color is great on the female. So these, just saw one of these this morning by itself with turnstones, which was a shock to me. Usually I see them in big flocks, or well, not big, I don't know, a handful or more, and they run with the waves, kind of in and out on the beach. But they're sanderlings. Technically, all of these are referred to as peeps. Are there more than these three as peeps, Diane? Or like these are our standard ones, right?
These are our standard ones. Most of the small sandpipers can be called peeps, but we get to see the sanderlings, which are very white, and then the smaller least and western. And just as you're looking at the pictures, you'll notice that it might be the leg color that differs. It might be the shape of the bill or the length of the bill, or patterning on the head would be another thing to look for. But many times you will see all three of these together running right along the edge of the foam.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And Teresa's question, how do you distinguish them? I mean, for me, to be honest, that's really why I started carrying a camera, because I just didn't trust my quick ID ability for these things. And I just wanted to know more about what I was looking at. But all of those characteristics that Diane is mentioning, once you get in the habit of really paying attention to those, it just helps. And I think it was Rich, I credit him for saying this on my first bird walk, but it was to sort of say out loud what you're seeing about the bill, the wing, the tail, the leg. And the more you're kind of making those mental notes as you're looking, it's helpful when you look it up. I will say, I love the Merlin app now. I tried it in the very beginning and it wasn't so good, but the sound recordings and even the bird ID, it lets you put in things like, it's the white bird, like, where did you see it? So it asks you questions and then sort of says, it could be this, or this. And it gets you closer to bird ID if you don't know it right offhand. Here's one that's a fun one. So this one, I've only seen it in big groups at Point Reyes. We usually only have a few, but whimbrels. We've seen, maybe I've seen up to a dozen at walk-on, but not usually in big groups like that.
But again, it's a bigger bird. You look at the head pattern, the beak shape, the beak length, might be able to look at leg color, certainly for certain of the sandpipers and shorebirds, you would see that. But we're looking at, this is more of a rocky coast bird. where some will typically be in the sand, others will be more typically on the rock. So where you see the bird may be important also.
And maybe, I mean, this might not be a very nice thing to point out if people are eating dinner, but do you see the poop? Like evidence of birds on rocks, that's a really good cue. That's something, even below trees, like for hawks and osprey and stuff like that. Like something is active there. All right, here comes the eye roll again. For me, so I've learned to love sparrows. I'm learning to love gulls. I don't really like the gull category very much. I find it really challenging. Diane, I'll turn this one over to you. Good night, Phil.
Well, the easiest thing here is start learning gulls in the summertime because we have Western gulls here in the summer. That's the only kind that nests here. That's the main one we're seeing until late summer. But notice it's got, and this is what you'll look at on the different gulls. What color is the head? What color is the beak? Is the back dark? Is it pale? Do you have black wingtips? So you're looking at the same things you would with sparrows, but you've got a different group that you're comparing. And we do have a test your gullibility sheet that John Muir Laws drew that does show you the different gulls. If anyone doesn't have one of them, let me know and I can send it your way.
I love this little comparison. I had no idea how much bigger a Western was to a little Hierman's gull. Those two gulls I know pretty well. Everything else is a question mark. Here's a little mew. They used to be called mew. Now they're called short-billed gulls,
And it does have a short bill. It's a much tinier gull. It's a little more delicate. The head is not pure white. The leg color is pale. So those are typically the parts of the gull that you're going to look at for ID, if it's conveniently standing there in front of you.
yeah. And that's the sheet that Diane was talking about. It is really handy. It's still.
Notice the glaucous winged gull does not have black on the wingtips. It's pale all the way down the wing. It's another pretty good sized gull. The ring-billed gull, you're seeing speckling on the head. You're seeing a ring around the bill. You're seeing yellow legs. So again, whether it's sparrows or gulls, you start to look for certain characteristics, and that's what you carry through no matter which group of birds you're looking at.
So now we're ocean birds. This is sort of the distance that you'll see loons. If they're close in, they're still pretty far away.
Right.
If you want good practice with loons, Stengel, I think, is a good overlook. They tend to really come in nicely there. And then further out, kind of Del Mar sometimes, but I like Stengel. Bodega Bay is a great one. So this very calm water. This is a common loon, and that was shot in Bodega. But here they are kind of side by side. These are the three types in their winter plumage. They look drastically different in breeding plumage, but this is the way we get to see them right now.
Right. If you lived in the Midwest, the common loon was that spectacular black and white patterned bird with a wonderful ringing call on the Minnesota lakes. But here in the winter, it looks quite different. But as you're looking at these three, notice the different shape of the bill, whether it's held straight or tipped up. Does it have a necklace? Does it have a clear neck? Or is it patterned on the back? So some different characteristics to look at. And
I'm putting this one in. This is not a loon, but throws me even still because it's got such a tall
Sure,
neck,
longer neck.
but it's a grebe. It's a redneck grebe.
Okay.
But also out there with the loons, like Stangle Beach too. Has been around. There have been some around Shell and Sea Pine too. Here's
Nice.
one. This is taken in the estuary, but this is usually one that you see further out, and it's a western grebe, so also a grebe. I don't have good pictures of a Clark. Does somebody have a question about this one? Yeah.
Yep. Oh, sweetie.
No,
Okay. A Clark's grebe, the eye will be in white. It won't have black around it, is a nice way to tell them apart. We see more westerns than Clark's. This is another, this is eared grebes. You usually see more than one of these. And if you're like me, by the time you get your binoculars up or your camera up
They're
to take
running.
pictures of them, they've all dove. they're gone. So they're fast and they're little. But here the three, I kind of put these side by side. Boy, you can tell when we got a new lens, huh? Look at that camera on the right. The eared grebe has a smudgy dark head, kind of, the white isn't pure white, and the horned, I think they've just got a knobbier head and then the much longer neck. I don't know, Cheryl or Diane, do you have ways that you think of telling these three birds
the eared
apart?
grebe, they often say it's got dirty ears. It's got smudging down further on the face, where the horned grebe has a distinct line up at the eye and a cleaner ear area. We actually had them side by side near the Arched Rock at Galleons a couple weeks ago, and that was fun to get to compare the two.
Yeah, nice. They have, even when the water's calm, they do have these puffy bottoms, the eared grebes more
Eared
than the
grebe
horn.
is- Right,
Yeah.
right.
Oops. So for cormorants, we have three types. And the double-crested, with its distinctive orange, also goes up the river quite a bit. But the other ones you'll see along the coast, along the rocks and out in the water.
Right, the double-crested is the largest and has that yellower orangey face. The Brandt's cormorant has this little pale patch under the chin, and it's a sizable cormorant, but not as large as the double-crested. And that pelagic has a much narrower bill, some red on the face, and you're getting to see a little bit of the white flank patches there that they have only in breeding season. But that breeding season covers a pretty good amount of time.
Yeah. This is another ubiquitous bird.
Yes.
The wild turkey. I'm starting to learn the bird abbreviation, so I've put them on a few slides, but not all of them. And here's a hummingbird. It's the one we have right now. In other times, we have two other hummingbirds, but this is the Anna's hummingbird. And I've included the one in the center is a male. It's just turned in a direction that it's gorgeous. That beautiful colored spot isn't picking up the colors like it would, but that's a male. And then a female is on the left. So favorite category, I think, especially, well, Mike loves hawks, but we've been really working hard on our accipiter ID, but we have 7 hawks at Sea Ranch, and I hope we'll see all on the count. This one, what's your joke, Diane, about if you see a hawk, it's most likely, how is it not a red tail, I think?
Right. If you're not quite sure what the hawk is that you're seeing, the first question is, why is it not a red-tailed hawk? Because they are variable, they are common. You can see the red tail, which is nicely distinctive. You can see a dark line along the leading edge of the wing, a dark patagial line, and often with a whiter chest and a dark belly band. But they're also one of the most variable. And so, right, there we go. It's a red-tailed until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
So an
exactly.
immature red tail does not have the red tail. Here's one where you don't see much red, but you do see the patagial line along the leading edge of the wing. And again, the hood, the white chest, the belly band.
Here's that red tail. And there's that belly band that she's talking about too. One thing that I learned recently is to really look at eye color on birds too.
Mhm.
I knew this one on the right was a red tail, but I didn't know much else about it, but showed it to a birder friend and they said, oh, it's a juvenile. Look at its eyes. They're light and get dark as they mature. And this is that Harlan that we were talking about earlier. Really beautiful bird. Really hard for me to understand why it was a red tail, but if you see in flight, it does have those patagials
Sort
that
of.
are dark underneath. So, yeah, sort of.
But again, why is it not a red tail?
Yeah. So this one is not a red tail. And what gives it away for me, I just shot this the other day.
The sound?
That constant call is definitely a sign of a red-shouldered hawk. And this is one of those things with the juvenile versus the adult, they're so different. But so juvenile on the left, the call is really what alerted me to really what it was. And then when you see them as they're mature, they are beautiful. But if you take a look in these photos, juvenile on the left, you don't really see the red shoulder, but boy, you see it on the two on the right. It's striped tail and wings when it's in flight is another giveaway for this bird.
Beautiful.
They're gorgeous, gorgeous.
So's that.
Yeah, so is that one. These are really fun. And there's two sets of pairs right now, one up by Del Mar and one just above Shell Beach that we're seeing almost daily. Really fun birds. So this is the white-tailed kite. They're those birds that hover. There's another bird that hovers that we'll look at in a second. But one thing to note about this one that I've just recently learned too is the color difference with juveniles, that they've got this rusty look and haven't gone pure white, and their eyes aren't really deep red when they're immature. Here's another, oh, I just love every single hawk. So this is a northern harrier. They're really distinctive in a few ways by the way they fly, but also the way they look. They're almost owl-like. They've got this photo. I wonder, I might not have a good photo of the tail and next. Anyway, yes, I do.
There you
Good.
go.
So there are two also around between sea pine and pelican a lot lately, but that white at the base of their tail, this photo makes it look like they're flying high in the sky. They're only doing that occasionally. They're usually down low. You'll see in a second. So this one, really different. Notice the brown is gone. It's gray. They call these the gray ghost. This is an adult male. So you've got a color change. Its wingtips underneath are really dark compared to this one, but beautiful. And that was just taken a few days ago out. This is out at the lighthouse.
And that owl-like face actually helps them funnel the sounds of their prey to their ears, just like an owl does. So they hassle or harry their prey low to the ground.
Yeah, yeah. They do really look owl-like. They're such a neat bird. So this one was, I shot this video on our practice walk yesterday. So I've been really working hard on learning accipiters because they're one of the really challenging ones for me. But this is an adult bird, and I was going through like all of the defining characteristics, and I was pretty convinced I was looking at a Cooper's hawk. I still, like, there's a person that I know online who's a hawk expert up in Canada with the ABA, and I always run it by Gail just to make sure. And yes, indeed, this one is a Cooper's hawk. But take a look. Maybe this will let you in on why I find them so challenging. They talk about, they sometimes look angry. They talk about streaks on the chest, thick and thin legs, and tail shape. And like, there's so many variations, but I mean, it's slowly starting to stick for me. But I think the important thing to point out about an accipiter versus the Buteos is they're really long, and they do have a much longer tail. I don't know, Diane, do you know much more about these birds than I do at this point? Do you want to?
Just that they're designed for what they need to do. The Buteos are going to fly over the field and come down with big feet and sturdy legs to catch their prey, and they're going to soar a lot. The Coopers and the sharp-shinned hawks are going to dive through the bushes to catch little birds. So they've got short wings, wider wings, long, slender tails, and feet that can grab feathers and hang on.
Yeah.
So
They'll take up residence by your bird feeders too.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Here's a Sharpie, so two juveniles, so Cooper on the left, Sharpie on the right. They talk about like the Sharpie looking cute. The streaks are less defined. The tail, it's a little bit cut off, but they talk about a flat tail versus a curved tail, like a curve in a C is a Cooper. Anyway, still, and oh, is it what's the CERE, the yellow here, that it's lower?
Yellow at the top of the bill.
Yeah.
It's a fleshy area at the top of the bill. You'll also look, if you get a good look at them, you can look at the size of the legs. Are they pencil thin? Are they thicker or thinner legs? The Sharpie is going after tinier food. The Coopers is going after sturdier birds.
Yeah. And they say like jay versus crow in size, kind of, right? I think. Anyway. So this is that ferruginous that we were talking about earlier. That would be really exciting to see one of those. Yeah, people should feel free to end, but thanks, Cheryl. We will definitely see you on the 7th. Excited about the count. Here's 3 that are not hawks. These are all falcons, and the one on the left you have a very good chance of seeing. The one in the middle, I've only seen a few, and then the one on the right I've seen more of. But its size here, I think, is really something to pay attention to, but we'll look at each one. This one, lots of them right now on power lines, poles, posts, house rooftops. This one is the kestrel. And something that I think is really fun to pay attention to with these is the blue on the wings tells you you're looking at a male. And then the lack of the blue on the wings is a female. Here's that gorgeous peregrine shot. Mike found, this was up at Navarro, and he peered over the edge of the cliff and took that shot. And then this one I put as a joke. This is usually what happens when you're looking up and the bird is gone. You're like, what was that? I've only been able to capture a merlin with my camera once, and it was on a Christmas bird count. So we do have a shot of seeing those, but they are such fast flyers and seem to come out of nowhere. And as soon as you see them, they're gone. But they, if you notice, I'm really off with all my terminology, but what do they call those things? Both the kestrels have those really vivid stripes.
Yeah.
There's a word for that, but it's less noticeable. It's still, whoops.
It's there
It's-
on the merlin, but less noticeable. We had a merlin up here by the airstrip last week, so there
Oh,
is
great.
one that's been around. The other thing that you'll think about is the kestrel sits there in the open and then it flies around and soars. The merlin, they call it the Harley Davidson of the falcons because it's here and gone. You just saw it and it's gone.
Yeah. And it, I would say the kestrels also do that hovering like the kites. They'll hover in one spot where the merlin and the peregrine don't do that.
Right.
Here's a gorgeous osprey. Big black and white birds, not as many right now as there are in warmer months, but they're still here. Another big black and white bird that we don't always get on the count, but it's exciting to see them.
Mhm.
But one thing to point out with this one is immature birds are around as well. So they're browner, but the bill size is just not quite like a hawk. It's just bigger. The birds are bigger too. And there's our turkey vultures that we want to, everybody will see one of those, I'm pretty sure. We haven't seen many owls, but this was one owl last year that we saw 3 times. But the northern pygmy owls are lots of fun. And Mike, that middle shot, I love that Mike got, that's the bird looking in the other direction. And it's got this pattern of feathers on the back of its head that look like eyes, but they're not.
And you're also noticing that the pygmy owl is mostly feeding on other birds, and it's an owl that's active in the daytime. So you do have a chance of seeing it on the count.
Yeah, and I would say in 2 of these cases, the jays were really letting us know something was going on. So when jays are really squawking like crazy in lots of numbers, that might be a clue that something else is happening. And then here's our
Nice.
bandtail pigeon, Eurasian collared dove, and the mourning dove. The one on the left is a lot bigger than the other 2.
Mhm.
And scare the bejesus out of me in the forest when they take off, because they're really loud, clumsy flyers.
They are clumsy flyers.
Yeah. And then here's our collection of woodpeckers. Just lots of fun to come across these birds too. So I'm learning a little bit more about patterns and calls. So that's the acorn call. But take a look, like one is a male and one is a female, and you can tell the difference by their patterns. And this one took me a really long time to figure out. I thought they looked the same.
But you've got, if you look at the one on the left above the bill, you've got white, black, and red. The one on the right, you've got white and red, no black line in the center.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The hairline.
Yeah.
And you'll see big white patches in the wings when they fly as well.
Yeah. And this one was taken yesterday on my way over to the practice bird walk. I put the sound on there just so you could kind of hear the beep. This is a hairy woodpecker. But I'll put these two up for comparison so you can see the bill size really is a nice indicator that you're looking at a hairy. The bill size is about the same size as the length of the head.
Right.
Where in a downy, it's a lot different. There is one other marking that I've been able to use more lately, and I wish my annotation isn't working, but above the shoulder, they call it a shoulder spur, but it's the thing that it looks like in the white, it kind of curves down and looks like a little hook. That's another nice one for the hairy, but this is a male hairy with red on the back. A female wouldn't have that. And the little downy on the left.
The other thing you can look for is the outer edge of the tail feathers. On a hairy, it's white. On a downy, it's white with black dots. So D for dots, D for downy.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I don't have a great shot of that. This one is a sapsucker.
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice the holes on that tree on the left, that lets you know a sapsucker is in your part of the woods. Or they're very reliably over in the back of the library right now. But one thing that we noted this summer looking at them is there are butterflies and hummingbirds that have this wonderful symbiotic relationship where they go and feed off of the holes that the sapsucker have made in the trees. It was just really fun to watch these birds go back and forth and work on these trees. That's down at the hotspot.
Flicker.
Yeah.
Good idea.
They're beautiful.
So they are such gorgeous birds. And the northern flicker, so there's a female on the right and the male on the left. And this is something I just learned about them is we've got another kind of subspecies that's less common here. So the two larger photos are red shafted up at the top. And the one with the red on the back of the head, that's a real defining characteristic of a yellow shafted. You can see yellow when they fly, but usually by the time they're flying, it's just a flash. Yeah, Teresa's saying their call is distinctive. They're a woodpecker that pounds in the ground more than on trees. Like they're all over, and they just have their plumage is beautiful. Their call is really great. They're just really fun birds, and probably the woodpecker you'd see the most.
Yes.
But the red, being on the back of the head was something I just learned. So very excited about that, and actually got to enter it into eBird as a rarity yesterday.
Great.
This has to be my favorite woodpecker, I think. Huge, very loud call, and the pileated. This is a ubiquitous bird. I took out it's not a crow slide, but we don't have crows. We only have ravens at Sea Ranch.
Did not know that. I didn't know that.
And this isn't the most recognizable position of a chickadee, but this is a chestnut-backed chickadee. I didn't realize these are the berries off of honeysuckle, and it was just feeding like crazy on these berries.
And chickadees are often seen hanging upside down in every which way, feeding on seeds and berries.
Yeah. So this is a this bird sort of hangs upside down sometimes too, but this is a bird that comes in numbers. There's the sound. Cute little sound. And it just looks like a puffball with a tail, but that's a bush tit. And then this is a different call. I was very confused by these two birds when I started, but the call completely different. This is a wren tit. And here's, this is a bird that also has a doppelganger. So this is a ruby crown kinglet. It's got a distinctive call too. But this is not a ruby crown kinglet. And I mean, this one actually is in a position that it looks a little bit different, but it's a Hutton's vireo. But the way one of the ways you can tell the difference is that smudge beyond the wing bar. And Diane, you know more about the call of the Huttons, right?
One of the things about a Hutton's, it often says the same thing over and over and over and over. So if you hear a bird giving a real repetitive call, you may have a Hutton's there.
So these are, and the ruby crown only comes out when the ruby crown kinglet is agitated. Sometimes you might see a little red spot if you get it at just the right angle, but that bird does not sit still for long at all. They really flutter around. We have another kinglet that's called the golden crown kinglet. That yellow always stays out. And then a little bit of orange can come up. I don't have great pictures of that one. They're usually way up in trees. I see those a lot less often. I see kinglets every day right now. And then these are our two, these have great calls too. We should do a whole thing on sounds, but the red-breasted nuthatch and the pygmy nuthatch are fun ones. Also mostly in the woods. This one, this is pretty close up. This bird should have a wide shot. It blends in with the bark so fast. It's sort of like what turnstones are to dark rocks, brown creepers are to wood going up tree bark. They've got a sweet little sound, and they move up, they kind of spiral up tree trunks and really blend in. The wren, the Pacific wren, we have three, well, actually, I'll show you all of these. So this one, the Pacific wren, is a pretty reliable bird in the woods. There's one that sings for me every time I walk down Salal Trail, but mostly I think of them in deeper woods than that, but they're lovely birds. This is a Buick's wren. It's spelled not like Buick. And then the other two on the right, we see less often. The marsh wren and the rock wren even less than that. But there's a marsh wren hanging out in the Leeward Meadow Trail right now above Walk On. I just saw it yesterday.
No, the house benches. Oh, what we saw though.
Ah, nice.
And then these birds love rooftops. I would love for them to come to my yard, but they have not. I can't convince them to visit. But the western bluebird, the female on the right and the male on the left. And this one looks like a sparrow, but doesn't walk like one. doesn't hang out where they hang out. But this is an American pipit. Sometimes up on bluff tops and in grasses, but most often down in the beach, kind of in the beach rack. And they have this funny strut. They have big feet too. You can't really see how big its feet are in that photo, but they have pretty big feet. So we're almost done, but the blackbird category, something I learned this season, you'll see a bird that I didn't realize was a blackbird, but the flock question was a good one. How do you estimate? How do you know? And they're all still pretty confusing for me, to be honest, but there's red-winged blackbirds and there's something else in this group, but we'll look at each of these. But this is a red-winged blackbird. On the left, it's in breeding plumage, and on the right, it's not. Those are both males. I found this so confusing. So male, female. It's
Blackbird?
like, what? Those don't even look like the same bird. But the more you look, the feet, the bill, like the build overall, it's like, okay, I'm slowly starting to get it. Not really, but this is a starling, a European starling. The juveniles, the male and female, I believe, are the same. There is no distinction there, I think, but the juveniles are brown and really speckledy looking. This is an adult. This is a male Brewer's blackbird.
Yep.
This is a female. Really different.
But you're
You'll
still
see.
seeing in these differences between male and female, just like in many of the birds, the female is colored a lot more like the habitat in which she's nesting and sitting and hiding to protect the nest. The male is going to stand out more.
Yeah, that's a good point. Here, these on power lines and flocks, they'll even mix in with others, but you see Brewers a lot at our feeder right now too. And these are ones you would want to look out for. They're less common. These are tricolored blackbirds. And you know that by the white on the wing bar.
Right, the wing bar on the red-winged blackbird was yellow in the winter time, where on the tricolored, it's white. And we mostly get some tricoloreds here in the winter time. And even though we say you don't see as many, we don't. There was a flock of 50 of them, not very, 2 weeks ago. So we can get a whole bunch of them here.
Yeah. This is a female cowbird, brown-headed cowbird. I couldn't find my male photo, but it's bluish on the head with a brown body.
Yeah.
And this is what surprised me. This is technically in the blackbird family, along with orioles too. But the meadowlark is always exciting to me to find when they come back for the season.
And quite a few around right now, if you find them in a grassy area, just walking through, and then that yellow pops right out at you.
Yeah, you're guaranteed to see these at Del Mar Point. They're definitely always there. So I said that was going to be it. I think we're done, but I'll quickly, these are unusual cedar waxwings. We may see them there. They do hang out around Del Mar Garden, this was the photo from yesterday, the mockingbird, northern, I think is it a northern mockingbird or just
mockingbird?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is the crossbill that we were talking about. And I think that's it.
Doing a little dance.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Dancing a jig. That's a whole lot of birds.
That's a whole lot of. Thank you.
You
That's
did great,
fantastic.
Sharon. Thank you. So again, here's the map. We divide the territories. If you look at the coast area, the north coast, the south coast, whoops.
Sorry.
And then we have a mid-coast section, which is a little bit north, a little bit south. We have one territory that goes from the ridge to the coast. That's the mid-ranch transect. And then on the meadows, we have a meadow at the north end on the east side of the highway and a meadow at the south end on the east side of the highway, as well as the Ocean Meadow on the west side of Highway 1, both Ocean Meadow North and Ocean Meadow South. And then at the very, very top, all along the denser forest, the Forest Ridge section. So each of these areas will have a leader. If you've not figured out where you'd like to bird, Cheryl and I are happy to chat with you and help establish which team you'd like to be on. Most of the teams will go out at least for the morning. Many people will have lunch and then go out again in the afternoon, but it's certainly not a requirement. If you've had it, if you're cold, if you're tired, that's fine. But we hope that you're interested in particular habitats, and that's what we can match up here. So each of the leaders will set a meeting time and place, and many will encourage you to bring a lunch along so that we can stop, warm up, share stories a little bit, and then those that want to go back out in the afternoon can do that. A couple of tips here. We try not to double count birds. So when you know that birds are moving around, you don't want to be counting the same flock of robins 2, 3, and 4 times. We know, however, that we will double count a few birds and we'll miss a few in the process. Cheryl, do you want to talk about counting a larger flock? What do you do?
Well, there are various methods, but generally it's suggested if it's a large flock that you take a little piece in your eye view and count maybe 10 and then just guess at counting across the flock how many times the 10 would go across. So 10 times 100 or whatever. Oftentimes it happens really fast. So you do need to keep in mind, besides pointing out there's a flock overhead, try to get a general idea of count, and also what kind of wing beats and kind of how they're flying will give you a good hint about what kinds of birds they are. And sometimes you can hear them, and that will help too. I think, Diane, you can describe that a little better than I can. The red crossbills have an interesting sound, right?
They do. And as they fly overhead, your head just learns to go up and go, red crossbills are up there somewhere. So we can identify birds by sound if we are sure of what they are. And but it's better not to guess. And if we need to, you just list it as species. We know they were blackbird species. They might have been brewers, redwings, tricolors, starlings. They were just black colored birds in a group. So that's fine if that's the main identification we can do. And if there are unusual sightings, we would like people to give us a call so that we can also get a chance to get somebody to look at it, or even better, get a photograph of it. And sometimes if it is something unusual, other leaders would like to take their group over and take a look at it as well. So one of the things that we do for a bird like a peregrine falcon, we ask you to note, was it an adult or an immature? What time did you see it? what direction was it flying, because we don't want to count the peregrine that flies from the south end to the north end and count it in all 4 territories. We did not have 4 peregrines out there unless we see one that's an adult plumage and one that's an immature plumage or something like that. And we do definitely have peregrines in the area, and they're out there hunting other birds. So the trick there is see if you can identify which one it's caught. We do
You wanna
count
say something?
turkey vultures in the morning. We stop counting them at 11 because we figure by then the thermals have put most of them in the air and they're ranging widely along the entire 10 miles of Sea Ranch. So we would be counting them over and over and over again if we kept counting all day. So here's 2 nice, unusual sightings. The one on the left is a red-tailed hawk, but it's totally chocolate brown. We do have one that has been seen around the Navigators and Sculpture Point area this year. And we've also seen a ferruginous hawk up at more at the north end in the Helm area. There are some meadows there. So these would be unusual birds. Others might like to know where it is and go out and look for it.
And
So-
I know Eileen has said, I would really love to see, there is a red-shouldered hawk. We didn't get to the hawks yet, but it's a slender hawk, but it's all, it's pale. It's not completely white. It looks kind of tea stained. I haven't seen it in person. I would love to see that. So I would count that one as an unusual sighting.
Yes,
I'll let
definitely
Diana know.
unusual. It's a red-shouldered hawk that is partly leucistic. It's missing part of its normal coloring. And so instead of being brown across the back, it's pale whitish gray. Roseanne over there has a picture. I know she's seen it, and some of the others. It's been hanging around the north end of Sea Ranch, now east of Highway 1 in the golf course area. So another unusual one to watch for.
Yeah, we saw it perched. We were just driving to surf and saw it
Oh.
perched and even turned around to try to get a photo, and it took off. But
Uh-oh. Well, it's
Really?
been hanging around now probably for at least a month, maybe more. So it's hopefully just staying for the winter.
And it's a red-shouldered hawk, but it just has an unusual coloring on this particular bird,
Right.
this individual.
and they're really rare. I think there's only a few hundred like that in existence. So it's a real treat to get to see
So
one.
leucistic or leucistic means it's not an albino, which would be all white with red eyes, but it's missing part of its normal coloring. And so it's partly white. And then when it flies and opens its wings, you see the typical red-shouldered pattern under the wings. But your first question is, what is that bird? It's totally different. So here's a detailed look, and we'll just quickly flip through these. The North Coast runs between the houses, the bluff trail, and as far out as you can see in the ocean. Rich Trissel will be leading this group, and that's mostly walking that stretch of coastline.
I did my first walk with Rich. He's a great birder.
Yes. So we've put who's leading the territory and their email address, and hopefully those were in an email that you should have received as well.
Oh, Diane, I don't see if you saw the comments, but Marianne is saying they see it almost every day. Eileen said she saw it around Thanksgiving, but hadn't seen it in a while. But Cypress on the
red-shouldered?
7th green. Yeah,
Ah, great.
I know where
Okay.
I'm going as soon as the rain stops.
Good. Doug Fursell will lead the one at the South Coast, which is all of the lodge property and points. and then walking along the coast and doing a little bit of birding on the land side and a lot of birding looking out at the ocean. Ocean Meadow North on the west side of Highway 1, all of those meadows stretching from the very north end down to almost the middle. Pat Much and Bill Much will be doing that. I think they have one other person, would love to have a couple of extras. Similarly, at the south end, Sarah Snyder has the Ocean Meadow at the south end.
And if people know folks on the far south end in the lots that don't have trails through them and wouldn't mind having people come and look for birds on their spot in their lots, let Diane and Cheryl know.
Right, because you'll notice that this territory goes all the way to the south end of Sea Ranch. And we can drive the roads there, of course, but there's a lot of property in view that's inaccessible. We do welcome if people let us know that it's okay. Ursula's name, by the way, is Wasky, not Whiskey.
Oh.
So Ursula and Ruth will be doing the meadow on the east side of Highway 1, that long north section. Cheryl has the east meadow to the south. Some of it is walkable, some of it is roads, and that's what we often have in many of the territories. There's Mike Petrich along the Forest Ridge, narrow ridge area, and then widening up, including the hot spot and on south into the forest.
I call his cookies on the cul-de-sac trail. So they drive and look at
Right.
birds. So really there is something for every
Everybody.
ability and appetite.
And then Connie Shimbor has a limited team on the golf course because she will do that in a golf cart, is a golfer, knows to stay out of the way and not get in trouble. The Mid-Ranch Transect, Mike Reinhardt comes in and covers that from the ridge to the ocean in the very center part of Sea Ranch. So a nice variety of habitats in that area. As Karen said, they often come up with the largest number of species. And here's Karen's team split in the middle of the coast with the transect breaking it up in the very middle. But again, areas between the houses, the bluff, and then out to the ocean.